Welcome to Talks with Tracy, with certified hypnotherapist, life coach, and licensed mental health professional, Tracy Claremont. Tracy will share her healing journey and explore the many meaningful alternative healing methods in our world today that will support you in doing your own deepest emotional healing. So please welcome the host of Talks with Tracy, Tracy Claremont. Let the suffering end and the healing begin.
Hello and welcome to Talks with Tracy. I'm your host, Tracy Claremont, coming to you live on the Bold Brave Television Network. Thank you so much for joining me, and thank you as always, the Bold Brave Television Network, for giving me this opportunity to be here with you all. So today is part 2 of a 4-part series that I am doing on narcissistic abuse and narcissism, and I'm partnering with the beautiful and amazing Ash Benavides. So Ash and I, we've teamed up to have this discussion, and we're always coming from the perspective of self-empowerment and healing, and this series is no different. We'll still be coming from that perspective. In fact, all shows, Talks with Tracy shows, come from that perspective. So last week we did part 1 of this series, and if you haven't seen it, please take the time and do so. It is Talks with Tracy number 19, and we talked about the narcissistic family system and the roles that are forced upon children within these systems, and we really talked about what it feels like to be parented by a narcissistic parent. So yeah, if you haven't seen that, please check it out. A narcissistic parent really lacks the traits required to successfully parent a child, and those traits required are self-awareness, compassion, patience, empathy, and narcissistic parents really lack those qualities in their parenting. And when I say successfully parent a child, I'm not talking about, I'm not setting the bar high. I'm just talking about raising a child without creating and causing psychological damage to them. So I'm not by any means talking about perfect parenting. I'm just saying not causing psychological damage. And when you don't have those traits, you do in fact cause psychological damage to your children. The children raised by narcissistic parents, they spend their childhoods trying to get validation, trying to gain acceptance, trying to be noticed, trying to get their parent to love them. And this definitely can be damaging psychologically. So now, one of the things I wanted to bring our awareness to today is shame. So I am really passionate about this subject. I want everybody to hear me say shame is human poison. It destroys people. It tears people down. It causes people to have the absolute lowest beliefs about themselves. And it really can be the source of the core beliefs of not enoughness. If you already have those core beliefs, it goes straight to those beliefs and triggers them. Shaming does. And it can be the source of what I have called in the past, I'm a piece of shitness. All of that is shame related. So shame is a very important thing, and so very toxic. So before I bring Ash on today, I just want to talk a little bit about shame. First off, what is it? So shame is the extremely painful feeling of humiliation and a psychological distress that comes when, this feeling of doing something wrong, doing something foolish or stupid, even doing something dishonorable or immoral, maybe. It's typically triggered by some kind of judgment or criticism or rejection. And it, like I said, it goes straight to that core belief of not enoughness, and it triggers all of that. So, did you know that shame activates the same region of our brain that is activated when we feel imminent danger? So that region of our brain that jumps into fight, flight, or freeze that is the same region of our brain activated when we feel shame. So, that our brain's number one job is to keep us alive, to help us survive or to have us survive. And, this part of the brain, it was developed way back in our ancestry when we were facing gigantic predators and awful imminent danger. This is the part of our brain that was developed back in caveman days. And this is the same part of our brain that is activated when we feel shame. So I'm just kind of stressing this because I want people to understand just how damaging this is. I work with children and families all the time, and I see shame used. It's part of it's like an accepted part of parenting in our society. I certainly see shame used by narcissistic parents, absolutely. But I also see shame used by non narcissistic parents in their parenting. And, in keeping with my statement about this being um, human poison, we certainly wouldn't hand our children a spoonful of arsenic and just wait to see the results, right? That poisons our physical body. Well, if you think about shame as being psychological poison for our minds, you know, I would encourage people to take shame out of shaming out of their lives completely, because it does create that kind of damage. It poisons people, poisons our children, poisons us as adults. So now I love the way Dr. Brene Brown talks about it. She says that if you were to take shame and put it in a petri dish to make it grow like you're doing a science experiment, she says it would take three things to grow, and that is secrecy, silence, and judgment. If you add those things, shame grows. Now, she also says if you were to take that same amount of shame and put it in a petri dish and douse it with empathy, then it couldn't survive. So empathy is really like that the anti-venom to shame. And that's an important thing to note, because empathy is something that we need to have just even for ourselves, so that we can go to those vulnerable places and heal from experiences like this. So once again, I just want to say it, shame, it robs us of our self-confidence, it destroys relationships, it drives us to hide ourselves, hide from our own authentic selves, hide from other people, to lose ourselves. It holds us back, it imprisons us, it isolates us. And I don't think I'm speaking too strongly when I say that it even leads to death in some cases. This is a very serious human emotion, and shaming is like administering poison to people. So that's kind of like my soapbox for today. I'm saying we need to quit shaming ourselves and other people, and our world would just be such a better place. All right, so I actually feel better. It's been on my mind so much lately, and I've been seeing it around me so much, and I just needed to get that out. So, as I said before, I have the amazing Ash Benavides with me today. She's partnered with me to talk about narcissism and narcissistic abuse. She is our resident expert from her own personal life experience and from educating herself on this dynamic, on this relationship dynamic, on this thing in her own healing on this topic. So please join me in welcoming the beautiful Ash Benavides. Good
Good
morning.
morning.
How are you?
Good in my truck in Wyoming because I'm headed to a ranch.
Oh, wonderful. That sounds amazing. Thank you for joining me from your truck. I love that. And it looks like you have a horse trailer attached to the back of your truck. Is that correct? It looks like
I
through the
I
back
do,
window
and
there.
I have I do have a horse with me that I'm bringing. So a horse that I'm going to
Nice.
finish training. And speaking of horses, that was actually a huge part in my healing. When we talk
Oh,
about like narcissistic abuse and empowerment, I honestly think a lot of my empowerment and a lot of my growth came from involving myself with animals. I mean, it could be any animal, cat,
Mm,
dog. I sort of dove into the horse world. I grew up with horses, but
mm,
the overall experience with them changed my life, and probably assisted in the aid of like, in the reality of growing up in a narcissistic family and spending my whole life
mm.
with narcissists. So um,
Yes,
I find it
absolutely.
interesting
So
you say,
go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, the beauty of relationship with animals is that they they just are there, accept you for who you are. There is no judgment, there is no agenda, right? They're just like happy to see you and there to love you and connect with you. And sometimes people who have not experienced positive and genuine connection with humans can find that with animals. And maybe that's what you're talking about, that connection.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And unconditional love and acceptance. That's the other thing animals give to
Right.
us.
And they don't shame
Yeah.
you.
Absolutely not. They have no agenda. They just want to love you. Yeah.
Right.
Beautiful. So, you heard me talking about shame, obviously. Um, what are your thoughts about shame being? So I don't know if I said this, but shame is the primary weapon used in narcissistic relationships by narcissistic people. It's like their go-to, their biggest weapon. So, what are your thoughts on that? Is that your experience as well?
It is. I feel that shame can come in many forms. And as I have learned so much about narcissistic abusers, whether it's family, friends, or partners, it's so installed in our culture.
Mm,
Without, you had mentioned narcissists and non-narcissists can say, shame somebody. And there's an act of it, there's that, like, think of the term I just said, shame on you. People say this all the time.
mhm,
um, there's also something I learned even as a parent myself. If you're disciplining or correcting someone, and you said something about a petri dish and empathy, one of the things I truly believe in is you can call someone out, you can voice something, and then you can also come back around and be like, hey, can we have a conversation about this? Whether it's a child or an adult, it's sort of like a two-way street. It's and versus shaming, where it's just, I'm going to shame
mhm,
blame, right? I'm insecure.
mhm,
I have my own baggage, so I'm going to go ahead and dump it all on you. It's all your fault. And yeah, I mean, that's the
mhm,
hardware for so many people, including myself, and my family members that experience this. And it's interesting because you're either going to recognize it, or you're going to spend your whole entire life a kind of attached to the word shame, right? I'm not good enough. I don't have enough. I can't
mhm,
do this. And when we start thinking these thoughts and believing these thoughts, they sort of come into fruition. We had a
mhm,
conversation, you and I, about confidence and competence makes people uncomfortable. Now, if we really
mhm,
dissect that terminology, then we see our society is a very shaming culture. Like, we don't build each other up. We we aren't
mhm,
we aren't giving praises to where praises are due. We aren't being like, wow, like genuine people to each other. We're jealous, we shame, we call people out in ways that aren't healthy. And it's just sort of like the underbelly of not just families and relationships, it's our society. It's this sort of
mm.
generational, here's my gift to you. My gift to you is shame, because I come from shame.
Yes, I absolutely agree, and I love how you really just nailed it. Where a person's own insecurity, own shame is triggered, or own feeling of not enoughness is triggered, and then that person deflects, right, and acts out and puts that shame on other people. So because they can't sit with it themselves. And you're absolutely right. That happens in narcissistic relationships all the time, but it also happens um, in our society all the time. And I love you drawing attention to, that shame on you phrase, because, there are ways to address things without making somebody feel horrible about themselves. With children, you can separate a behavior from who they are at their core, right? All
Correct.
kids make
Yeah.
mistakes. That shouldn't be a shameful experience. It should be a growing experience. And we should help them to change that behavior. But we don't have to make it a reflection of the very core of who they are. And that is shame. And that's done all the time. I see it frequently. Yeah. So,
Yeah, it is.
oh, go
It's
ahead.
actually a darkness that I think the more I learned about our society and narcissistic traits, I see it everywhere. I see it in the
Um,
workforce. I see it, amongst people. It's bizarre when you start really paying attention to what is fed to everybody and people believe it. And it's like the
Absolutely.
dominant and less so.
I totally agree, which is why it's a wise move to retreat to animals. I support you in that. So we're gonna cut to a brief commercial break. When we come back, Ash, I'd love to. We talked about narcissistic family systems last time. I'd love to kind of bring it into the how things, those experiences play themselves out in adulthood, and talk about your experience and some common patterns and things that outcomes that happen in that. So we're gonna go to a commercial. You're watching Talks with Tracy on Bold Brave Television. Please join us after the break.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them. Rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies. Find settings that allow them to be the most productive and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back to Talks with Tracy with me, Tracy Claremont, coming to you live on the Bold Brave Television Network. I am here with the amazing Ash Benavides today, who has graciously agreed to partner with me on this series, talking about narcissism and narcissistic abuse. So Ash would like to build off of our show last week where we talked about family dynamics and roles that are forced upon children in these kind of narcissistic family systems. And, now kind of talk about how it plays itself out in adulthood. And I know when we were talking about your situation, you had said that you fit into that role of the lost child or the invisible child. And in thinking about that, I was, kind of looking for possible outcomes. And some of those could be a chronic feeling of not enoughness. Um, and also maybe a need to be seen, or a need to, like, maybe some like attention seeking, because you didn't have that kind of attention and were always trying to be seen. So maybe some of that in adult, as an adult. And then also maybe a sensitivity to rejection. So do you relate to any of those things?
All three of them. I think
All of it.
a lot of my life, I was very much the girl that wanted to. I would stir the pot for attention.
Mm,
Everywhere I went, the jobs I was at, college, I was kind of the clown troublemaker, but it gave me attention. And then at the same time, I spent most of my life not feeling good enough for anyone, which
mhm,
transferred to my partners. There was this subtle underbelly of like, do they like me? Like it was right back to the feed loop of people pleasing. So I think being invisible was
mm,
this constant as I got older, like where do I belong? Because I don't belong with my family, so I need to find somewhere else to belong. Um which I think, yeah, it was a constant repeat until again a year ago I had realized after my crash and my grand finale of narc breakups, holy cow, like you come from an enmeshed narcissistic family, and just researched it. And because I wasn't seen or heard and sort of just sloughed aside, I was constantly looking for home, looking for a place to be okay. um
mm,
and yes, absolutely, the attention seeking, and at the same time feeling not adequate for anyone. And the only way I'm getting better is I talk to myself. I have conversations. You are good enough. You can do this. You love yourself, because ultimately, as we go through life looking for love, when we come from abuse, we have to find it in ourself.
mhm,
And again, I think that took, that relentless determination to dissect my entire life, which wasn't easy,
mhm,
of patterns. And it just over and over again saying, it was like a feed loop, constant. I
mhm.
found the same thing in the same men. I had children with narcissists. Like it was that foundation. Even though I was the invisible child, even though I was the rebel, I still had that in the back of my mind without realizing it was already there.
Right. Without
I think.
realizing that you were moving through your life on that kind of energy and with those beliefs. And in talking about sensitivity to rejection, and also some narcissistic strategies that narcissists use. I was thinking about, or it came to my awareness, that our society today with social media really just opens the floodgates for strategies like love bombing and things like that,
Oh,
right?
yeah,
Back in the
absolutely.
day before all of that social media, you had to put quite a bit more effort into like getting to a person, and it was more in-person kind of stuff. But what I've noticed in working with younger people today is that they kind of have a distorted sense of what is healthy in a relationship when it comes to attention from another person. So, like with social media, if a person doesn't get like that person, like, um, liking this and messaging them and telling them this and everything like quickly, then a lot of times young people will take that as a rejection rather than, if somebody takes a few days to get back to you, that could be actually a healthy thing. But that
Right.
rejection is
Right.
triggered so fast, and it just like opens the floodgates to love bombing, right? Which
Right.
is Do you want to talk about love bombing a little bit and what I mean by that, or what that is? I know that you know about that.
Oh gosh, I feel like I've been love bombed to death by not only lovers but friends. Um,
Mm,
because when you have a sense of inadequacy just installed in your hardware, you naturally fall prey to people being like, "You're amazing. You're so cool. I really like
mm,
you." And the difference I'm learning is action, right? Because one of the things I've learned, because I've spent my entire life amongst not just a family of narcissists, or my dad, I should say, not my family, but also friends and lovers, is do their actions match their words? And once
mm,
I figured this out, no longer love bombing was a thing for me. People say it all the time. Oh, you're incredible. You're such an inspiration. It goes through one ear and out the other. And I think that also comes from building my own self love, because ultimately, again, even when we struggle from these families or repeated abuse, the only way you'll find your way out is if you learn to love who you are as you are. And and I think one of the things that I realize in recent, I don't have anything to do really with my family. I've not seen my dad in 15 years. I've cut basically everyone off. Is that whatever role you play could also be a part of how you heal in life, right? So if I look at my own family, my brothers, they were kind of in the golden child loop. Who was going to be the favorite for this week or this month? And since I was invisible, I kind of turned rebellious. I was the one that was a free spirit. I ran away at 12. I was out
mhm,
of there. But one of the things I found, as I discussed with one of my siblings who's older and still struggles with the trauma of my father, is I thought, wow, maybe our roles have a huge part in this, because I think that I can't tell my brothers how to be, but it's easy for me to walk away because I was already invisible, right? So if you're already
mhm, mm,
invisible, you have the ability to move out. You could be like, cool, I don't want the inheritance, I don't want the relationship, I'm gone. But when I look at my brothers, and the one brother who has struggled a lot with the trauma and how it's affected his life every day, and because in his terms the relationship isn't healed. Well, there is no
mm,
relationship with a narcissist. You are
mhm,
a chess piece in a relationship with
mhm,
a narcissist. You mean nothing to them. My other brother is back to being the golden child. He talks to my
mhm,
dad, he's in my dad's graces, but it's weird because for me, I'm like, "Oh, well, you ran away." And so I have compassion for my brother. I said, "Hey, you're doing a great job with what you have. Also educate yourself, because the more you educate yourself on narcissistic abuse, where it comes from,
mhm,
you have more aha moments. And you also can have compassion for them, because narcissists come from trauma and they're just
mm.
not really cool to hang out with. But yeah, absolutely. Like that shame that you speak of lives in my brothers, and they're
Mm,
older. Like they've
mm.
tried everything, but their roles were very different in the family. So for me, because I was already on the outs, it didn't matter. For them, it
Yeah.
still matters.
Yeah, so I made some notes on that golden child role in the family. So a lot of times into adulthood, they continue to feel that pressure to deliver on expectations, because they still are in relationship with that narcissistic parent. And they were the ones who were glorified and who made the narcissistic parent proud because they did what the narcissistic parent wanted them to do. So, like, as you grow into adulthood and you start to want to do your own thing, you may not want to continue in that role of doing everything your narcissistic parent wants. And then as an adult, you may learn the very hard lesson of just how conditional the so-called love that you received from your
Yeah.
narcissistic parent was, right? Because if you're not following through on their expectations even as an adult, you are going to be on the receiving end of shame, even as an adult. If you
Absolutely.
continue on in that relationship, maybe that's some of what your brother is experiencing. I don't know.
Well, it looks like a game of chess to me. I just
Mm-hmm.
was a chess piece that got kicked out, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
longer it's been for me, the easier. I mean, people are baffled that I haven't seen my biological family in over 15 years. I'll never see them again. But as we learn with the
Mm-hmm.
narcissist, you have to cut off all contact. When you want to heal, they got to go. There's
Mm-hmm.
no ifs, ands, or buts, because no matter what you do, yes, you will be a part of their game. And just like you said, if you don't do what they want, or you don't
Mm-hmm.
live to their expectations, you're shamed. So you're repeating that cycle. And when you stay in that, that's the problem, because you just kind of
Mm-hmm.
look like a gerbil on a wheel.
Yes, absolutely. So I'll just bring up one other role role that we talked about last week, and I just want to briefly say some of the possible outcomes for the scapegoat. So the scapegoat is the kid who's blamed for everything, and I'll just say this quickly because we have to go to a commercial, but in adulthood they can feel alienated, they can have low self-esteem, low sense of belonging, difficulty negotiating relationships, because they're literally felt like they're to blame for everything, and receive an awful lot of shame. So I just wanted to throw that out there in case that people are kind of putting themselves like saying, what role was I in? I just wanted to put that out there. So we're going to go to a commercial break, but we're going to continue this talk when we come back. You're watching Talks with Tracy on Bold Brave Television. Join us after the break, please.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality? But it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating. Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back to Talks with Tracy, coming to you live on Bold Brave Television Network. I am here with Ash Benavides, and we are having a discussion about how experience with narcissism and narcissistic abuse in childhood plays itself out into adulthood. Now, I do want to point out that I think it's important to note that you don't have to be raised in a narcissistic family system to find yourself in relationship with a narcissistic person. In fact, people raised in by non-narcissistic people raised in families that believe in the goodness of people and offer second chances, and everybody can change for the better. Like every person is a good person at heart. People raised in that kind of family system, they are sitting ducks for a narcissist. Narcissists love those kind of people because that's what they want people to believe of them. And they can, those are more like maybe empathic people who then get taken advantage of. Um, if you haven't guessed already, I'm talking about myself, that's how I was raised and how I fell into these kind of relationships and experienced this kind of abuse. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there. We're going to talk more about that next week, but first, I just want to talk about how tricky it can be. Ash, you kind of touched on how tricky it can be to change these patterns, and part of what makes it tricky is that to change these patterns and do what you were talking about, like go inward and look at your own emotional experience and your sensitivities, that is required in healing to go to those most uncomfortable places, and that requires you being vulnerable. Well, it's super tricky when doing that, even having emotions has set you up for abuse in your experience. So going to those places, it can be uh, told to you as a place of weakness, or point of weakness, being vulnerable, and it can be your experience that this places you most at risk. So there's kind of like this dilemma where what previously was absolutely not allowed and accepted, being vulnerable, is now what will bring you out of the darkness and into the light, right? That's a tricky situation. So like how do you manage that, or how do you negotiate that? How have you negotiated that within yourself?
I mean, again, I think like when I come from a narcissistic family and the different roles, it's easier for me. I do a lot of self-reflection, and that's the
Mhm.
biggest part that our society doesn't give to each other is self-reflection, self-accountability. I hear it everywhere I go. There's sort of this non it's like the roles people play. It's like victim and predator. And I think once you have the ability to take accountability to whatever that is in life, then you have one step to going inside and looking at your own patterns and your behavior. Why are you doing the things that you do? I mean, some people, and I know a lot of people on different self-healing journeys, it's almost like they're addicted to the self-healing journey. Whereas, someone like me, again, it's a different for everyone. I had so many different experiences that I realized that life is too short, so I'm going to go ahead and power through this. But I think like the first step is being able to look at yourself, like in anything. Like if you're rude to
Mhm.
someone, right? Or if you cut someone off, why did I do that? Am I in a hurry? Like, where is this coming from? But again, I think unfortunately our society is so geared for these behaviors, it's difficult for people to just self-reflect. Therefore, it's
Mhm.
challenging to go and heal those wounds.
Right. And healing does require you to go to those most uncomfortable, sensitive places within yourself. And, you have to do you have to turn that empathy inward, right? You have to have compassion for yourself. I remember so many moments of me um, in my head, my, internal dialogue, um, like criticizing myself, like, oh my God, Trace, how could you have let this happen? What are you doing? Why? How, you have this going for you and this going for you. How embarrassing that this is where your life has come to. And I remember you telling me at different times, you were like, whoa, I thought I was badass, and how could I, and this is happening. Do you remember saying that to me?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I
Yeah. And
think that's also like the again, you have to be able to like question yourself, question what am I doing? And that's the first step to figuring out like when you want to understand more about like why you're making the mistakes you're making. Because if I hadn't done those steps, which was later in life, it was last year, I didn't realize 80% of my friends are narcissists. and that I was just their kind of like their little jester, like people pleasing. I was constantly holding their hand, and it's not a good look. But I think when you open up Pandora's box, be careful
Mm.
because you never know what's going to be inside.
Right. And then there's a difference between questioning yourself and second guessing yourself, right? So questioning yourself really goes towards that, what I call radical honesty, like being completely honest with yourself. And second guessing is something that is less functional. It's more of a dysfunctional pattern that actually can be the product of coming from these experiences, because you're always told that you're wrong. And when gaslighting is happening, you're literally twisted around um, to change even what your own thoughts are about something you're trying to express, and all of that can cause us to not even trust ourselves. So there's a difference between that radical honesty and really looking at your life and questioning what's happening and second guessing yourself. Would you agree?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that it's again, I think what happens is the same thing that happens like in what I've researched, if a narcissist can get help, which there are few that can. But you have to have a clarifying moment, whether you are subjected to abuse or you are the abuser. And whatever that is, it seems to, from my friends' experiences, from my own experience, I like to call it a little come to Jesus moment, and whatever that is sort of spurs you into, I got to change my life. I got to make
Mm-hmm.
changes. This isn't working. Something's not working here. Um, and you'll uncover the truth. I was always a runner, so I ran away from situations a lot. I'd bolt, and now I just kind of work with like the traumatic experiences as a gift. So instead of bolting, I turn it into traveling. Like, can I go
Mm.
here and meet other people and connect and commitment, right? Commitment to place. And I learned also in my own family, like just last year, oh, that's why I ran away from home. These people are crazy. And you spend your whole life not knowing that. You just kind of, you ask yourself, why did I run away from home like 3 times? And I don't want to talk to my family anymore. Why is that? So I think
Yeah.
when you get uncomfortable enough, you're going to make the changes.
Yeah, exactly. And I like to call those moments like broken open moments, where you reach a point where your awareness is around the suffering and you just don't want to do it anymore. One of the things that I want to mention as well, that when you're gathering your awareness, when your awareness is coming to you and you have been raised in a narcissistic family, it can raise that sense of shame again. It may be the case where, and it wasn't the case for you, but it may be the case maybe with your siblings, where you were being raised in this family and you didn't really realize how messed up the whole system was until you grew into your adulthood. And that can be a source of shame as well, like shame from being part of this dysfunctional family and not having a normal family, or a healthy family. So that can also like activate your feelings of not enoughness. But it's really important to remember that this was done to you. You didn't create it yourself. I don't think any child would choose to be parented by a narcissistic parent. And also, it's not who you are. It's a part of your story, and you have these parts of your story that you're sharing, but it's not who you are. You're talking now about developing awareness of who you truly are versus that part of your story. So, but again, getting rid of the shame around all of that is essential. Letting go of that and not allowing that to be your identity, just to be part of your story.
Right. I think that that is, again, the first thing is being able to tell yourself it wasn't from, you, it was from something else, and in the case of
Mhm.
my own family, I realize when you stay in with a narcissist, you can't even heal. You can't even
Mm.
again, I referred to it as an addiction. It's going back to the
Mhm.
addiction, the alcohol or drugs. There's nothing different about abusive relationships and drugs and alcohol, because you stay in it. You choose to stay in it. Therefore, you're not taking the first steps to realize this isn't good for me. I think that's something that I've seen with people and even my own family, because I don't have anything to do with them, because I haven't seen anybody for over 15 years. I'm on the home stretch, right?
Mm.
Whereas my
Mhm.
siblings and my cousins, they all hang out, they all are really enmeshed in everybody's business, and they all have sort of the traits I've learned about. But because I left, I'm free.
Mm.
So it makes it
Yes.
easier to heal, right? Because I chose to walk away. First step, you got to walk away. Whether it's your
Mm.
husband, your best friend. I mean, I got rid of a best friend this last fall. Oh, that was a disaster. I mean, 15 years of friendship, and I was like, no, we're not doing this anymore. And I can tell you
Mm.
honestly, Tracy, that when
Mhm.
you start recognizing this and you start realizing enough is enough, your life will change like that. I mean,
Wow.
it is
I
mind
so
blowing.
appreciate I so appreciate what you're saying, because you're talking about getting to that moment where the clouds clear and you start to see what's really happening, and then you start to set limits around that and make positive change for yourself. So thank you so much for that. We're gonna talk a little bit more about that in our next segment. We're going to break for a commercial right now, but we're going to have some closing thoughts around just exactly that when we come back. So please join us after the break. We will be right back.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back to Talks with Tracy, with me, Tracy Claremont, and the beautiful Ash Benavides. We have had such a great talk today, and as always, I love to end our show with just a very positive message, an empowering message, and I really want people to know that healing is available to them. A lot of times people feel like real healing is just not available to them, and it is. It's important to understand that you don't have to allow these relationships to continue to harm you. And, just because you have been in a relationship where a narcissistic person who has their own shame, um, and has literally projected it onto you, you don't have to carry that shame of another person. It doesn't belong to you. You bring your awareness to it, you let it go. And these are really things, Ash, that you've been speaking so beautifully about. So what are some of your thoughts about letting that go and moving on for yourself? And you've talked a lot about awareness, which I totally agree is such an essential part of this.
I think, if I were to tell, let's say, a beginner person trying to get out of a narcissistic marriage or a family, you start
Mm-hmm.
with like in moments where things are, you might have the feeling of confusion, right? So let's say you're having an argument with your mom or your partner and you're confused. You tell yourself, this is not me, this is them. I'm going to have compassion for them, but this has nothing to do with me. Once you start practicing affirmations, which is something that helped me move along quickly, it's
Mm-hmm.
easier each time you self affirm something. It'll get easier and easier, whether you're trying to find your way out of it. These are the parts where you're like I said, when I say I am good enough in the mornings, like, or I
Mm-hmm.
thank spirit for the day, right? When you do affirmations every day, and they've done studies, it works. So if I was telling a
Mm-hmm.
beginner person, in those moments, don't get stuck, but tell yourself, hey, this has nothing to do with me. This person's most likely, in narcissistic traits, or comes from their own trauma, and they're dumping it on you, and like, don't take it personally. I guess there's a book that everyone should read called The Four Agreements. I've never read it, but the Four
Mm-hmm.
Agreements sound ideal. So, um, don't take it personally is one of the
Mm-hmm.
of the agreements, and I think that's something that resonates, just those words, like, don't take it personally, because people, no
Mm-hmm.
matter where you go, are going to do something. And again, if our culture is geared for narcissistic traits, and it really, you brought that up, even with social media,
Mm-hmm.
it is it is like the dark side of this country. It is spreading like a wildfire. And the best part you can find is being able to self affirm that you're okay. I can't tell you how many times I've said those words. I'm okay. I'm okay. You got this,
Mm,
Ash. It's okay. And
right.
when you start
Well,
doing that, it makes you stronger.
yes, and I've said before in previous shows that as you start to build your power up within these relationships, they can get pretty scary because there's going to be a lot of pushback to keep you under control, essentially, for that narcissistic partner to keep you under control. And I started with this mantra of saying faith over fear, because I was so terrified. I can't even tell you how terrified I was. It was such a scary process to stand up to this and begin the process of getting out of it. And I love what you're saying about the words that you say to yourself. It's really like rewriting our script, right? Shifting our dialogue about ourselves and developing new core beliefs about ourselves. And that's part of that process of getting back to our authentic self. I said on one of the shows that we need to reclaim our birthright of self confidence, because when we come into
Right.
this world, we have self confidence, and then through experience, it can be like chipped away at, right? Until it's almost non existent. We need to reclaim that again. And what you're saying about being mindful of the words we use and the thoughts that we have, our internal dialogue, it's so, so important. And it's such a great place to start. Also just basic calming strategies, doing deep breathing to regulate our bodies, and when we get, because these situations can be so dysregulating. I'm sure you had moments of emotional dysregulation when you were going through like that last relationship where that was like you mentioned, it was like your final narcissistic hurrah.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm a little more salty, so I was constantly in the this is BS. So my exchange with them, whether it was a friend or a partner or my family, because I walked
Mhm,
away from it all. I was like, my
mhm,
happiness is worth more to me than money, than security, than a
mm,
house, than a car. My happiness, or I would say for years, I rather live in a cardboard box on a street than stay in misery. But I think for me,
mhm,
it was a lot of like walking away, huffing and puffing, being like, this is total BS. Like, why are these
mhm,
people acting like this? And again, now that I know what they are, I can just say that. I'm like,
mhm.
oh, that's a narcissist. Okay. But I mean, you got to get uncomfortable. And that's a state of fear.
Mhm,
I think that if you live in a home that you are married or have something, it's scary to cut that off and
mm,
go out into the desert and trust what that you're going to get water, that you're going to be okay. But I look at
ah,
it as, is the desert with the unknown better than staying in a repetitive abusive cycle? Because to me, when you start to realize abuse isn't fun, and it's not, it isn't, it's destructive, and
mm,
you're
mm,
so miserable, you're going to find a way to find happiness. I think it's the primal instinct of the body and the mind to find some form of joy.
Yes, what a beautiful way to end our show. Next week, Ash is going to be back, and um, I really want to talk about what you're talking about is really this place of radical acceptance of what it is. You know, it is what it is. Do I want to stay in it, or do I need to walk away for my own health and sanity, right? And so next week we're going to talk about that. We're also going to kind of look at self-care within the narcissistic relationship. Is that even a thing? I can tell you, well, spoiler alert, it's not. And we're going to talk about that. So, yeah, next week, please join me and Ash again, Ash and I again for the third part of our series. And thank you, Ash, so much for being here today. I really appreciate it, and I love everything you have to share. So, thank you so much. So, this has been Talks with Tracy with me, Tracy Claremont, coming to you live on Bold Brave Television Network. Please join us again next week. Bye-bye.
This has been Talks with Tracy. Join us each week as Tracy and her guests will come together and realize that underneath it all, we are all the same and never alone. So join us each week and let Talks with Tracy be your safe place to land in your healing journey. Right here, Thursdays, 11 a.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave